It's time for our next act. I'm so happy to introduce Alex Dang. Alex is born and raised in Portland, Oregon. He started performing poetry at 17. He's been on the Portland Poetry Slam Nationals team for 4 years. 4 years. He's been the Eugene Poetry Grand Slam champion 3 times. He's been a TEDx speaker at 2 different places. And he writes on a lot of things, like Huffington Post, Upworthy, Everyday Feminism, and has over 2 million YouTube views. So without further ado, Alex Dang, welcome to the Front Porch stage. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. How are y'all doing? Lovely, lovely. My name is Alex Dang, and I'm going to do some poems for y'all. But first and foremost, who here is like familiar with spoken word poetry, slam poetry on a scale of like yes, shaky? No, I have no idea. So, for the purpose of my spiel, aw man, none of you know what spoken word poetry is? Looks like I'm gonna have to teach you. It was invented in the 1980s by a construction worker named Mark Smith, but we don't care about Mark Smith because he kind of sucks, so then we yell, "So what?" when we hear his name. So, invented in the 1980s by a construction worker named Mark Smith. Exactly, we don't care about Mark Smith, he sucks, but he basically invented a game. Slam poetry, he just started having people judge poetry, 5 random people from the audience, he wanted to get people into his open mic. It's a fun game, but the game also is inherently flawed because we are quantifying and qualifying others people's poetry and work, which, exactly, it's like, I don't know, a little counterproductive, I think. But see, we got it. Someone understands. But what it did bring, fortunately or unfortunately, was a new kind of poetry reading. It started having other folks start memorizing their things, start performing a little bit more dynamically. And example for me, I came from speech and debate world, I came from hip hop world, I came from drama world, and all of these different things I kind of combined and made my kind of style and my voice. And so as I started writing, I learned that you inherently have to write about yourself, which is scary and vulnerable, and there's a lot of things with that. But as I looked deeper into myself, I realized that my story is always going to be intertwined with everyone else's story. And so I started looking at myself, my heritage, my identity, and I realized that my parents are very influential in my life, in a lot of things, but they came to America around the late 70s. They are commonly referred to as the boat people from Vietnam. My mother is Chinese. She was born and raised in Vietnam. My dad's Vietnamese, born and raised in Vietnam. They met in America around, 1980 something-ish, and since then, they had 2 kids, my 2 oldest brothers, then they moved to Oregon, had my 3rd oldest brother, had me. It's great. I love it. But it was a weird way growing up. And, there was all these different maneuvers that we learned. There was a lot of code switching. There was a lot of make sure you're doing the right thing. And there was a lot of questions that I had. One of the big ones was my mom's Vietnam escape story. I always wondered how she got to America, and she told the story, and she's told the story every year since. It's a it's a bullshit story that takes like 6 hours to tell, and there's a lot of things that happen. My grandma had to bribe the fishing captain. There were pirates involved. Different countries would not recognize them as refugees, so then they turned them away. Re-education camps, all the stuff. And I'm like, Mom, why do you always tell this story every year? Like, why do you bring up this tragedy, all the worst things that happened to you? And she's like, the worst things that happened to me do not define me. And I was like, damn. And she said that she didn't want us, me and my 3 older brothers, she didn't want us to forget where we came from. But then she paused and she said, and also, I don't want to forget where I come from. And again, my mom's dropping knowledge. And she's like, of course, I'm a superhero. And I realized that my mom is the one who is redefining comic book badassery. Like, she's 4'10", she's about, yay high, and she has all of these amazing superpowers, right? So one of them, super strength. She's carried 4 sons, tossed their sorry selves through college, then made the other, my father, a mountain of a man, a pebble smooth into the shape of her palm. Intelligence, such gems like do it right once or do it wrong 3 times, don't be sorry, just don't do it again, and of course the world's favorite, of course I know everything. I'm your mom. Telepathy. All the times that I thought I was being sneaky in high school, but she was just letting me get away with it. Clairvoyance. She can see ghosts too. She can still see her home burning and smoldering. She can hear ghosts too. She can still hear the roar of the fires. Adversity. All she could do was watch her mother's wedding ring spirit away into the captain's pocket, jingling with the other boat people's tickets out of the only home that they had ever known. Watch countries deny refugees of safety, of humanity, of existence. She watched days crawl in a re-education camp where she learned nothing but survival, immortality. My mother should have died. Become a statistic about Vietnamese immigrants who did not make it, a prisoner of Viet Cong, another shouting point for American protesters to end a war that she simply called childhood, and yet she still stands as a lesson to prove how incredible we all can be. She has never let her tragedy trump her triumph, never accepted that this was all there was. She never waited for a miracle to grant the miracle that I call mom. She only stitched up my cape and told me, fly. I did that poem once at a competition. It got the highest score, clinched the win, called my mom. I was like, Mom, I did your poem. I got the highest score. It helped me win. I did it. And she said, you're welcome. So my mom has always told me her escape story. Me and my brothers, we've known the escape story since we were younger. And then my dad's escape story is I snuck onto a fishing boat. That's it. Like my uncle's is I stole a helicopter, and I'm always like, and then what? You flew it to America? I don't think that's how things happen, dude. And as I've gotten older and not a little less curious, but as I'm getting older, I've realized that with everybody, there are some things you just do not want to talk about. And I think I've reached the point in which I'm understanding what my father is putting down. He's so focused, while my mom is, making sure we don't forget where we come from, my dad is always focused on where we are going. And it took me a few years to realize that, and we're trying to talk some more. But the thing with us is not only is there a cultural barrier, a language barrier, but also just we're bad at talking about our feelings, we say 13 words to each other when we drive home, and then we let the hum of the pavement fill in the rest. My dad's a mechanic, and he likes cars better than people because people don't have a check engine light, don't have a dashboard, don't tell you if something is wrong, but cars are always honest. My dad is always honest. No, he doesn't talk much, but he lets his motor oil hand speak for him. Growing up, my brothers and I never learned much about cars. 4 sons of a mechanic, not one of us could replace a tire. My dad never taught us. He said he would be around forever to fix all of our cars. Plus, we'd be college men. We'd be doing more important things with our hands. My dad never talks about love, but he shows it. So when he shows me how to drive, he tells me to listen to the car. Cars will always tell you what is wrong, but only if you're listening. And so I'm trying to listen to the car, and I hear the whir of the engine, pistons pumping fire and gasoline as we cruise down Powell, and I imagine the power it must take to get metal son and father down the boulevard, and then I hear my dad's heart. I hear this heavy machinery, all ignition and patience as I go too fast in a school zone. Or I forget to turn my blinkers off. My dad laughs and just tells me to check my mirrors, check my blind spots, check my weaknesses, tells me to listen. My dad has been listening his entire life. Never once turned on the emergency brake, kept sugar out of his gas tank, turned a key and carried an entire family with him. But his heart is getting weaker. Some things don't last forever. They can only be prevented from breaking down further. So I try to find the owner's manual to my father. I try to reassemble the engine of his childhood to see what steered him here, but his make is of another generation, something I can't understand, something I don't find instructions to, something his dashboard refuses to show me. There's so much mileage in my father's bones. There are spots in the road never ventured because he did not take us there, told us dead end, wrong way, turn around. I don't know what he is hiding. What corroded secrets my father harbors like rusted ghosts in a junkyard. All I know is I want my hands to look like they have been dipped in oil, to look like they have done something important, like a mechanic, like my dad. I want to be like my dad, y'all. Someone who always carries you from the back seat into your bed, who lets you sit on his lap and steer the wheel, who always reminds you to buckle your seatbelt. Dad, I know you won't ever tell me what is wrong, but it's okay. It's okay. We'll just drive instead. I promise. I'm listening. It's only fair I do poems about my brothers now. Nah, they're cool. I like them. They're my brothers. I have 3 older brothers, and it is fun. For the most part. You know how, you get it. It's fun for the most part, but also, I have 3 older brothers. It's a whole time and a half. As I've gotten older, I've gotten that weird, like, oh man, I'm getting to become an adult, and I'm almost like peers with my brothers. This is weird. Becoming an adult is weird. And so as I started thinking about the things they've taught me, I found it easier to kind of write it in their voice, to try to imagine them giving me advice or talking to me. So this first one is about my brother, Richard. This poem is called My Oldest Brother, Richard, Reminisces About Our Childhood. They were the golden days. Basketball until the sun rusted, then run home. Our feet, raindrops on the cracked sidewalk. Open the kitchen door with everything smelling like fish sauce. Crept into the night after mom and dad went to bed, and this is when we started sharing the world with each other. We spilled rainbows in our dark hours that tuck themselves in our darker corners. We felt like gods as we weaved immortality through our spines. Our fingertips twisted and lifted seas, and we became legends, combing the ocean floor for treasure. I once picked an entire reef of coral and seaweed and placed it on my crush's doorstep. We are really out here now. Us. We watch the dawn break like waves crashing against the shore, and we are the suns who rise. And look how golden we are. My second oldest brother, Eric, teaches me how to play basketball. Keep your hands up. Don't stop. Dive for every loose ball. If you let your team down, you let yourself down. Hands up. Are you listening? Keep your hands up, stretched like Atlas holding the sky. You know about him, right? He was a titan who kept the sky from crashing on Earth. He always had his hands up. Think about that. If you don't keep your hands stretched out, reaching, defending, always open, you're gonna let all the up fall down. But of course, it's okay to fall down. Call it heaven on earth. Are you bleeding? It's all right to bleed. Remember when I sprained my ankle? That wasn't even during a game. That was during practice. If you don't hustle when no one is watching, how are you going to sweat in front of an audience? If you can't sing to yourself, do you expect them to listen? I learned the most when I practice, but practice doesn't make perfect. It makes permanent. So be careful what you do, how often you drill. You might end up digging holes you can't get out of. Watch all that downness sprout like geysers. It's hard to get up from down. Rocket ship in flames, though. There's nothing wrong with going and flying down, astronauts coming home early. You have to know when to lay, when to fall, like the leaves. No one tells them when, but they just know, and you just have to know yourself. Are you tired? Good. Let's keep going then. Keep your hands up. Good. See, you fell, but your hands caught you. I didn't do that. You did that all on your own. My third oldest brother, John, shows me how he wins the race. He just kept running. It was wild. My third oldest brother was born in the year of the horse. A group of horses is called a band, and he does not play an instrument because he is the instrument and the music. He is the air rushing through lungs, and his legs are percussion against the floor beneath him, the piano tinkling as he sprints across an open field, the drums pounding rhythm, righteousness, and rumble as he makes his way past the finish line. He says, keep your blinders on and run the race. Keep going until you've won, and then you keep going, because there's a difference between winning a game, owning the track, being given a bouquet, and running for the sake of running. Running for the sake of moving with the world, to be part of something larger, to feel the world spin like a track, and to keep breathing, to be part of the symphony of this earth, to become the wind blowing petals off a tree, a breeze walking softly through the garden. So, me and my brothers, my oldest brother, Richard, second oldest brother, Eric, third oldest brother, John, and I'm Alex. You'll notice we all have white people names because my parents didn't want other people to butcher our real names. So all of our real Vietnamese names are our middle names. And I don't know if anyone's had that kind of experience with people fucking up their name, but it gets annoying because, a rose by any name, but like, that's my name. That's the first thing that I was given in this world, and you're just gonna disrespect it? That's a little fucked up. Alec, and then I try to mess up with their languages too. I'm like, Sarah, okay. But in all honesty, it is one of those things that happen, name changing. My mom, her name, like I said, is Ngoc Tu Tran, but it's pronounced Ngap Do Tran, and a lot of people can't pronounce that. And so for a while, she went by Jade, which is what her name translates into. And then for a while, because people kept hearing Jay and Jane, she just changed it to Rose because people could understand Rose, and she really liked Titanic at the time. But I find names fascinating because I have a poem pulled up, but does anyone here know who Michael Derek Hudson is? Cool, you shouldn't because he sucks ass. Let's see, way back when, I think it was like 2017 or something, Michael Derek Hudson was published in Best American Poetry, but he was only published because he used a pseudonym. He used the name of one of his high school classmates, Yi-Fen Cho, Taiwanese, and he said he changed his name so he would be able to get published under this pseudonym, under this real person's name. And so I wrote a poem called Michael Derek Hudson Changes His Name to Ngoc Tran, and my mother's skin fits him like a head on a wall, trophy in a case, history told by the victors. Michael tries out telling his new story, and the words avalanche out of his mouth. Every original syllable now white, cold, and bland, but the bell of every party he attends. Tell me more, his guests squeal, and without hesitation, he talks about how proud he is of us. He raised 4 brown boys, all on the strength of his hands, which are too soft and pale and delicate to have ever known the sweet, bloody labor of an immigrant. And then he drapes himself in the car business, hip dang, started from the ground up. He cuts out pieces of my father and his tapestry to decorate. Small detail, easily fixed, whiteout edit, and erasure. He lets his tongue parade in broken English. Exotic, they tell him. Stupid, they tell us. He takes snapshots of our American dream, and they frame it and give him a gallery. His picture, 1,000 words. Our picture, 1 word. Thief. Michael is such an innovator. He writes such wonderful tales, steals them out of thin air, since we are no longer there, no longer taking space, no longer even having names. That was just the wind, he says at his poetry readings when we gust and howl and tornado. But his body is too weak. He cannot carry us like my mother. Her skin gives him fever. Something starts clawing out from his insides, gnashing, desperate to be born. Me and my 3 brothers start crawling out of his throat. Fistfuls of our father clenched in knuckles. We smooth the familial cloth, stuff his arrogant mouth with it, make Michael choke on our pronunciation. He told our story one too many times, and his colony could not hold us any longer. We broke free, and we took back the names, the recipes, the home, the country, the air. By God, we took back the air and we filled it with our good brown bodies too hot to touch. We melt his trophies, smolder the wall, burn his house down. But we leave his name alone. How we doing? How we feeling? We want to get more pissed off, or we want to try to get chilled off? How we feeling? How we doing? Bring it. All right, so, okay, I have a good amount of time. So, I performed a lot at the Portland Poetry Slam. That was the place where I cut my teeth. It's where I learned how to, write poems. And I remember that I wanted to write poems for the audience. I wanted to get people to like me. I wanted to get high scores. And I remember once I wrote one of those poems, and Brian Stephen Ellis, one of my favorite poets who I look up to, booed me off stage. And afterwards, he said, "Alex, do you know why I booed you?" And I said, "Because it was a bad poem." And he said, "No, because you can do better." And I really appreciated that. And I took that to heart. And I went home and I wrote my very first poem. It was one of the toughest things I ever wrote, because as an 18-year-old, it's tough to be vulnerable with yourself. It's tough to look at your own life and your own circumstance and your perspective, to really give it some thought. And I came from speech and debate land, so everything I would do, I felt like I had to be perfect about it. Well, I feel like we all kind of come from that, right? You have to be perfect at it. You're either too much or too little, as we heard in the previous panel. There's all these different ways to navigate the world, and especially when you're a teenager, it gets a little tough kind of learning all these different things. And so I went home and I wrote a poem, and I wanted to write a poem about my race. I wanted to finally sit down and look at myself, look at my heritage, Chinese, Vietnamese, Asian American, Portlander. What does that identity mean? Youngest brother, Trailblazers fan, so forever a loser. God, if only. I wanted the Timberwolves to win so badly, because it's the underdog pride. But underdogs, that's kind of what I imagined myself to be when I was younger. So I would always try to be more than them. And so this poem, I wanted to make sure it was airtight, that it didn't have any logical fallacies, that no one could argue against me against this poem about what I'm bringing down to the table. I looked at it from every way possible, and it is impossible, because everyone's got their own opinion, and you're not going to be able to change that. But then I realized, well, they can't change my opinion either. And if I write a poem directly from my experience and they weren't there, but they disagree with it, then we already know what they're doing. They're disagreeing with my lived experience. And that made things a lot easier. And so I was thinking, all right, let's write a poem about myself. Let's really, really dig into how I feel about race. And then this poem finally was written and put onto page. It took like 40 minutes to write the first draft, but I feel like I felt like I had been writing that poem for the first 18 years of my life, and it finally got onto page. And I was always taught that anybody can fight, anybody can throw fists, but it takes a select few to talk their way out of fights. And I was that kid. Whenever kids would make other, fun jokes about my race, I would just make it faster and quicker than them, make it funnier than them too. Take away their power by taking away their, yeah, you get it, take away the power by taking away their humor. And then, or just very blankly like, what do you mean? Why is that funny? I don't get it, explain it to me. And so I wrote this poem kind of in that regard of because I wanted to finally answer the question that I get asked so much, what kind of Asian are you? And it's like, I'm a fire type Asian. Like, what kind of answer do you want me to give? And so, stupid questions, stupid answers. So I would say things like, what kind of Asian do you want me to be? Because anyway, you slice that egg roll up, it's pretty much whatever you want to see. I have played many Far East stereotypes. Awkward math genius, cold and calculated kung fu expert, assistant to Dr. Joan, you crazy. It's always just dependent on the circumstance. They want me to drive, how so? I can give them Tokyo Drift, Jeremy Lin, Mario Kart, Tiger Woods. Oh God, again, my blinker left on for about half a mile. I am the foremost expert on every single thing that is Asian. The Meiji era and the Band of the Samurai, done. Confucianism versus Taoism, I will give it to you with no slant. What's the difference between Asian stereotype 1 and 2? Let me tell you anything you want to know about my culture. Let me tell you in a Mulan-like soliloquy of me staring in the mirror asking, who is that girl that I see? Let me tell you about Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee and how they're related by blood to me. Let me tell you about being so marginalized, it's to the point of I really can't believe that's Asian. Let me tell you about derogatory terms and origins of words such as chink and gook. Let me tell you about the struggle of Asian parents not knowing the language, so we ate whatever food was cheapest. Let me tell you about the job of interpreter. When your English is already that much better than your guardians, let me tell you about honor and dignity. Let me tell you about a society that projects us as nothing but the secondary role and never the leading man. Let me tell you all the things that you do not want to know. Like how chink comes from the clanking of metal to railroad as the slaves built train tracks for this country to be connected. Like how the zipper head down the street is called that because the way our heads split open when struck with assault weapons. How jeeps ran over and left marks across corpses. Someone clever thought that we were only good to unzip. Like how every time you lump an Asian person together into one culture systematically makes us assimilate into an America that we simply thought was better than our war-torn homes. And every time you confuse me for another nationality that I might share similar features to, strips away my individuality, and I still feel the shame of being Asian, but also the heat and pious dedication of June 11th, 1963. Yes, there is still the envy of blonde hair and blue eyes and me wondering where all the boys who looked like me on TV were. But there are also the broken words my mother and father stage diving off of my tongue. Yes, there's the anger that I felt when those kids thought I would get them sick. And I still feel the ash of my hands burn with every prayer that I give. And I still feel like my skin is what I was worth. But I still feel the ironwork of my bones grow stronger with every train of thought that passes by. And I still feel pride. And I still feel heritage. And I still feel Chinese. And I still feel Vietnamese, and I still feel American, and I still feel. This is the unofficial sequel to What Kind of Asian Are You? Seriously, what kind of Asian are you? 100% Chow Chow. Who's your favorite Asian actor? It's a tie between me, Scarlett Johansson, and Mickey Rooney. All Asian people look alike. They must have been the shittiest Guess Who player in the world. How do you see out of your eyes, they ask me. Because everything I see is in widescreen. Because I make jokes faster and better than you. Because anything you've said, I've already spun into my arsenal. Because let's face it, I'm just funnier than you. Because what's scarier than the monster's face? His blood-stained sheets, his heart ancient and decaying, his teeth glinting grave digger shovels. What's more terrifying than that nightmare sinew, the carnage on tongue, hands craving necks? What is more powerful? Looking him in the eyes, laughing because he does not get it. Pinching his cheeks like the scared child he is and washing the dried, caked-on past of his sheets, bleaching it white. Clean, clean, white, hang it up, it's waving. His symbol of whiteness, now a symbol of surrender. But I didn't get here overnight. We spoke English and Chinese and Vietnamese at home. So one time I got lost in a grocery store and literally no one could understand what I was saying. And then my mom found me and that was all good. But that was a very important moment for me to kind of understand that even though I had 3 different languages, I still couldn't be understood. I had this really, really strong sense growing up that I wanted to, well, I mean, I'm a writer, I'm an English major, like all that gross stuff, yuck, school. But I always wanted to figure out how to say the one thing in every single way, so I could always be understood by people. But I learned that 3 different languages cannot make a full sentence. So during kindergarten, I'd be pulled out of class to fix my speech. They told me what was wrong was that my words blurred like hummingbird wings. My song came out as a whirlwind, too quick to comprehend, too fast to decipher. There were strands of line pouring out with different clicks and keys, a broken Morse code that twisted wicked confusion easy. I learned how to smooth and comb the knots of my talk at the same time I was taught Chinese in elementary school, so no one would expect chipped china plates lined along the soft of my gums. But I only mastered English. At family gatherings, uncles and aunts spoke very slowly to me, their sentences just hanging in the air, while on the other hand, I would read big, important government letters to my parents. I translated for them. I could say things that they could literally never say. And in class, I studied Chinese, and I found out how to say the things that I already knew how to say in English, but forgot how to say in Vietnamese. And then I learned that there are some Chinese words that simply sound like the English definition. Coca-Cola, cafe, olagan. And then I learned that Vietnamese words sound ugly and jagged when they hang out of my mouth. They hang awkward and loose from my teeth. I speak elbows and frayed vocal cords. As hard as I tried to adopt my native voice back, it never came out as clean or as silky as the commercial talk that I heard on television every day. My father is Chinese. Nope, my mother is Chinese. My father is Vietnamese. I am American. She speaks Chinese. He still dreams in Vietnamese. I speak repaired tongue. I dream in renovated dialect. I'm sorry, but can you speak a little bit slower? Em không biết nói tiếng Nhật. I'm sorry, but can you just repeat yourself? 我不知道说很多中文. It's not that I don't want to talk to you. It's just that I can't. It's because I don't know how. I'm still trying to tell you. I'm still holding on so tightly to the stitched up words and patched language of my childhood. Even in my perfect English, there are some things I just don't know how to say. Some phim is a Vietnamese word that does not exist in English. It means I am done. It means I am through. I am at the end of my rope. But it's funny that every small little thing leads up to another one, right? Like, okay, I've got one more poem and I know exactly which poem it is. But first, has anyone here seen Full Metal Alchemist? All right, yeah, we got a few folks. Okay, question number 2 is, who here knows what alchemy is? All right, a good amount of y'all. But for the sake and purposes of my poem, I will now be like, oh, you guys don't know what alchemy is? Let me remember. But, so this poem was inspired by Full Metal Alchemist, by alchemy in general. And alchemy is the science of change, so to speak. It's imagining the molecules you have in front of you and rearranging it into something new. So imagine a ball of aluminum turning into a bar of platinum. From liquid to solid to right back into your hand, alchemy is almost an art. But like any science, it still follows the 3 big science rules. Number 1, equivalent exchange. What you put in is what you get out. Number 2, the law of conservation of mass simply states that energy can never be completely destroyed or just grown out of nowhere. And the third one is the law of natural providence, which basically says one thing can only be transformed into another thing if they share some sort of property. And so I believe that we are all alchemists for the entire idea of what we put in is what we get out, right, y'all? But then if we don't have the right elements, we go out and we combine and mix ourselves with exactly what we need. Yes, we take our necessary parts and we alchemize them into a sword and shield. Watch me turn my anxiety into a deep intricacy that I will never forget because I wrote it all down. There is anger, yes, and it can burn and singe, but it can also be the fire that keeps your family warm. Never should they feel inferno, only the warmth from the hearth. Look, we break ourselves down enough. Let's put ourselves back together again. It's still you, it's still me, it's still us, and it's already been scientifically proven that we can never be completely destroyed. So turn your ambition into gold, veins running rivers of value, bones, diamonds, each of us, an endless waterfall if we want to be, a verdant forest when we choose to be, the sun, the moon, the stars, watch me transform into dawn, then noon, then sunset. Now see me dance with heavenly bodies as we waltz across the cosmos for an eternity of seasons. Now ask yourself, what are you made out of? Is it the memories you made on the playground? Let me ask you, what is childhood if not an exact amount of embarrassment, discovery, and acne cream? Why are we so scared? What are we afraid of? What are we so afraid of? Fear, when taken and unassembled, is merely a trembling mass of confusion. It is a voice telling yourself that it does not matter. Hand trying to write sense of all of this. But when we add clarity to balance out the confusion, what is left of the fear? An outline. A silhouette of who you once were. Walk through it like a door and look, you've arrived at your destination. I believe that each of us has so much inside we can use to create, all of us, an endless library of priceless knowledge, memories, laughter. I think anything can be transformed into love, because why not? Last week, I can't remember what I had for lunch, but I still remember that in high school, my best friends threw me a surprise party in the middle of the summer, because my birthday's in the middle of the winter, and I was very surprised and very grateful, and that memory is still a part of me 13 years later. Today, I'm reading a poem in the middle of a gorgeous forest, and it will be the most that I will ever feel. Until tomorrow, and the next day, and the next week, and the next year, and all of these emotions, every single little feeling, these tiny fragments, small little miracles that fit in your pocket, all of these scraped knees, empty cup of coffee, wallet lost on the bus, every single karaoke song sung so loudly and so badly. These are our elements. We are the base we build upon. What we put in is what we get out. I put in love, I get out life. Equivalent exchange. Thanks, everybody.
Alex Dang, everybody. Give it up for Alex Dang. Poet extraordinaire. That was really special. That was super fabulous.